The office was already alive with noise when Daniel walked in that morning. Phones rang, keyboards clicked, and voices carried over the hum of printers. He moved quietly through the rows of desks, greeting a few people with a polite nod. Most of them liked him, though he wasn't the type to chat much. Daniel preferred to get to his desk, open his computer, and start his day without drawing attention. He worked in the finance department of a large company. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave him stability. Daniel had been with the company for almost 4 years. In that time, he had learned every system, every shortcut, and every tiny detail about how things worked. Yet despite his skill, few people noticed him. He was the kind of person who did the hard work quietly while others took the spotlight. Across the office sat Tracy. She was confident, loud, and always seemed to know the right people. If Daniel was calm and steady, Tracy was sharp and fast. She spoke quickly, dressed perfectly, and knew how to impress managers. She wasn't bad at her job, but she had a habit of taking credit for things she didn't always do. When the team achieved something, she made sure everyone thought she led the effort. Daniel had seen it many times. He'd spend nights fixing reports or cleaning up errors, and the next morning, Tracy would present the final result as if it were her own. The managers would nod, compliment her efficiency, and move on. Daniel never said anything. He just smiled and went back to work. Deep down, he believed that truth had a way of coming out on its own. Most people would have been angry. A few co-workers even told him he should speak up, but Daniel didn't like conflict. He had seen how office politics worked. Sometimes the loudest person wasn't the smartest one, just the one who knew how to be seen. Daniel had no interest in playing that game. He believed that patience would reward him one day, even if it took time. That morning, as he poured himself a cup of coffee in the break room, he overheard 2 colleagues talking about Tracy again. Apparently, she had been telling management that the last month's financial report, the one Daniel had stayed late to finish, was her work. He felt a familiar sting in his chest but said nothing. He didn't even interrupt the conversation. He just stirred his coffee and walked out. When he sat back at his desk, he noticed an email from his manager asking for updated numbers on a project. He had already sent those numbers 2 days ago, through Tracy. She was supposed to forward them, but clearly she hadn't. Daniel quietly attached the files again and sent them directly this time, copying the manager. He didn't add any comments or complaints, just facts. He wanted his work to speak for itself. Later that afternoon, there was a team meeting. Tracy stood at the front leading the discussion as usual. She had a bright smile and spoke with confidence, waving her hands as she explained the team's progress. Daniel sat at the back, listening. Every time she mentioned our analysis or the team's effort, he could hear his own hours of work hiding behind her words. Still, he stayed silent. It wasn't worth it. Not yet. After the meeting, one of his co-workers, a friendly man named Oliver, leaned over and said, "You know she wouldn't last a week without you, right?" Daniel just chuckled and said, "It's fine. I'm not here for the spotlight." Oliver shook his head. "You're too patient, man. One day she'll take it too far." Daniel smiled faintly. "Maybe, but I've learned something. People like her always do." Over the next few weeks, things didn't change much. Tracy continued to rise in the manager's eyes. She volunteered for every presentation, made sure to sit next to the right people at lunch, and always had something flattering to say about upper management. She seemed unstoppable. Meanwhile, Daniel kept working quietly, cleaning up the financial data that kept the department running smoothly. He wasn't bitter, just thoughtful. On his commute home, he'd sometimes wonder if being silent made him weak or wise. He wasn't sure, but every time he thought about speaking up, something inside him told him to wait. He believed in timing, that life had its way of setting things right even if it took longer than expected. One Friday evening, the team was asked to stay late to finish a quarterly report. Everyone groaned except Daniel, who simply nodded and began working. Tracy, on the other hand, complained loudly but still took charge, assigning everyone tasks and claiming she'd review everything at the end. As the night went on, she left early, saying she had to attend a family event. That left Daniel and 2 others to finish the work. By midnight, the report was done, polished, double-checked, and sent to the manager. The next morning, the manager sent an appreciation email to the whole team, praising the late-night effort. As usual, Tracy quickly replied, "Happy to help. Teamwork makes the dream work." Daniel didn't even respond. He just smiled at the screen and moved on. The next week, Tracy walked around the office proudly telling everyone how her team pulled through under her guidance. Daniel didn't correct her. Instead, he quietly made a backup copy of every project file he worked on and saved all his communications. He wasn't planning anything. He just believed in keeping records. In offices like this, small details could change everything one day. Outside of work, Daniel lived a simple life. He liked cooking, listening to music, and reading in the evenings. His peace came from small routines. Maybe that's why the chaos of the office never fully got to him. He knew that chasing recognition could make people lose their calm. He didn't want that. What mattered to him was doing his job well and staying true to himself. Still, he wasn't blind. He knew that the longer Tracy got away with her behavior, the bolder she would become, and she did. Soon she started making small comments in meetings, jokes about how some people didn't understand the business side, or how quiet types lacked leadership energy. She never said his name, but everyone knew who she meant. Some laughed awkwardly. Others stayed silent. Daniel didn't respond. He just kept his expression neutral and took notes. But deep down, a quiet determination started to grow. He realized that staying silent didn't mean being passive. It meant being strategic. He didn't need to argue. He just needed to keep doing what he did best and let the truth unfold naturally. Then came an unexpected change. Word spread that a new regional manager would be visiting the office soon. This manager was known for being detail-oriented, someone who didn't rely on gossip or surface impressions. The announcement created a buzz around the office. Tracy was excited. She saw it as a chance to shine even brighter. She immediately started preparing reports and presentations, collecting other people's work to include in her slides. Daniel watched quietly. He could see where this was heading, but he said nothing. He just continued to do his job, carefully, accurately, and without drama. He knew that one day, when it really mattered, the right people would finally see the truth. And when that moment came, he wouldn't have to say a single word. That night, as he walked out of the office and looked at the building glowing under the city lights, Daniel felt calm. He didn't know how or when things would change, but he believed they would. Karma, he thought, didn't rush. It worked in silence, and just like him, the following week brought new tension to the office. The air felt heavier, and people were working with unusual energy. The reason was simple. The new regional manager was arriving soon. Everyone wanted to look good, and no one wanted to be caught slacking. Tracy saw this as her big chance. She wanted to make sure that when the new manager looked around, she would be the one who stood out. She spent the first few days walking from desk to desk, asking people what they were working on, but she wasn't really helping. She just wanted to collect details to include in her upcoming presentation. Every time she spoke, her tone had a mix of charm and authority. "Let me see that report," she would say, pretending to guide others even though most of the real work had been done without her input. Daniel noticed this but said nothing. He was used to her routine. She always appeared just when something big was about to happen. He kept doing his job quietly, updating numbers, fixing errors, and keeping the system running smoothly. A few coworkers whispered about how unfair it was, but Daniel never complained. He simply said, "Just focus on your work. The rest will take care of itself." Still, deep inside, he couldn't help but feel a bit frustrated. He knew he deserved more recognition, not because he wanted attention, but because he wanted fairness. When someone like Tracy constantly took credit, it didn't just hurt him. It discouraged everyone else who worked hard but stayed honest. The quiet workers of the office began to look at him with a kind of respect, as if they were waiting to see how long he could stay calm. One afternoon, Tracy approached Daniel's desk with her usual bright smile.
"Hey, I need that financial summary you're working on."
"The manager wants me to include it in the presentation for next week." Daniel looked up, surprised. "The one that isn't finalized yet?" he asked. Yeah, just send me what you have," she said quickly, waving her hand. "I'll clean it up later." Daniel hesitated but decided not to argue. He sent her the file but also saved a backup copy, dated and time-stamped. It wasn't about mistrust, it was about being careful. He had learned that in the corporate world, paper trails mattered more than words. Later that day, he overheard Tracy in the break room, telling a few colleagues about how she had been working day and night on the project. She described her supposed efforts in detail, painting a picture that made her sound like the heart of the team. Daniel didn't react. He just filled his cup with water and walked back to his desk. He had seen enough of her act to know that pretending only worked until the truth had a chance to speak. When the day of the regional manager's visit finally arrived, the office looked spotless. Desks were clean, people were dressed better than usual, and everyone had a nervous smile. The regional manager, Mr. Patel, arrived with a calm but observant presence. He didn't say much. He just walked around shaking hands, asking a few questions here and there. His quiet confidence made people nervous because they couldn't tell what he was thinking. Tracy guided him through the office, talking nonstop about the team's accomplishments. She used we often, but always positioned herself as the central figure. We implemented a new system, she said proudly. We streamlined the reporting process. Daniel stood a few feet away, listening as she pointed at charts and slides, all filled with his data. When Mr. Patel asked a few specific questions about the process, Tracy stumbled slightly. "Oh, well, my team handled that part," she said, gesturing vaguely toward Daniel's desk. Mr. Patel turned his eyes to Daniel. "And you're Daniel, correct?" he asked politely. "Yes, sir," Daniel replied. "Would you mind explaining how the data was verified? I'm curious about the accuracy method you used." Daniel explained simply and clearly. He didn't exaggerate or make himself look special. He just talked about what he did step by step. Mr. Patel nodded thoughtfully. His expression didn't reveal much, but he was clearly paying attention. After the tour ended, he thanked everyone and left the floor quietly. When he was gone, Tracy looked relieved. "That went well," she said to the team. "I think he was impressed. We made a great impression." Some people nodded half-heartedly, others exchanged looks. Daniel said nothing. He just smiled faintly and turned back to his screen. That evening, Mr. Patel sent an email to the entire department. He thanked everyone for their effort and mentioned that he was reviewing recent projects to understand the team's workflow better. It was a simple message, but Daniel noticed one sentence that stood out. "I'd like individual project summaries from each contributor by Friday." That meant everyone would have to submit their own reports separately. No group presentations, no shared credit. Tracy didn't seem worried. She even said loudly, "Perfect, that'll make our team shine." But Daniel could tell she wasn't as confident as she sounded. Over the next few days, she spent hours trying to gather files and notes from different people, pretending to be checking details but really collecting their work to mix into hers. Meanwhile, Daniel quietly wrote his summary, including clear timelines and references to every document he had created. He didn't embellish anything, just facts and dates. By the end of the week, everyone had turned in their reports. The office grew tense again as they waited for feedback. Tracy was unusually quiet during those days, probably wondering what the manager would say once he compared the documents. When Monday came, Mr. Patel called for a short meeting. He stood at the front of the room with a folder in his hand and spoke calmly. "I want to start by saying I'm impressed by the quality of work in this department," he said. "But I also noticed something interesting while reviewing the reports. Some contributions were misrepresented in earlier summaries." The room went still. Tracy shifted in her seat. Daniel stayed silent, his face unreadable. Mr. Patel continued, "It's important in any team that credit goes where it's due. I'll be working closely with each of you to ensure that your individual efforts are recognized properly." He smiled politely, but his tone carried a message everyone understood. The hierarchy in the room shifted slightly that day, though no names were mentioned. After the meeting, Tracy tried to act normal. She joked with people and pretended nothing had changed, but her confidence had cracked a little. She stopped coming to Daniel's desk so often. Instead, she sent short, formal emails when she needed something. Daniel noticed the difference but said nothing. He didn't need to. The silence between them said enough. In the following weeks, Mr. Patel began visiting the office more often. He asked small, precise questions about projects, and each time, Daniel's answers were clear and detailed. He never pointed fingers or criticized anyone, but it became obvious to everyone that he was the backbone of the team. Tracy still tried to stay visible, but now, her charm didn't carry the same weight. One afternoon, when most people had gone to lunch, Mr. Patel stopped by Daniel's desk. "I've been reviewing the data flow you built," he said. It's efficient and easy to follow. How long did it take you to put that together? Daniel shrugged lightly. A few weeks here and there, sir. I just wanted to make sure it worked well for everyone. Mr. Patel nodded slowly. That kind of mindset is rare. Keep it up. When he walked away, Daniel sat still for a moment, feeling a quiet sense of satisfaction. He didn't feel the need to tell anyone about the conversation. It wasn't about pride, and it was about peace. For the first time, he felt seen, and he hadn't had to fight or shout to be recognized. All he had done was stay patient and let his work speak. Tracy noticed the change too. Her tone around him became more careful, her smiles thinner. She could sense that something was shifting, but she didn't know how to stop it. The same quietness she once mocked was now working against her. Daniel never sought revenge or tried to make her look bad. He just kept doing what he always did. But life, it seemed, was beginning to balance things on its own. And as the weeks went by, Daniel couldn't help but think that maybe patience wasn't weakness after all. Maybe it was the strongest kind of power there was. The kind that didn't need noise to prove itself. The weeks after Mr. Patel's arrival felt different. The office wasn't as loud as before. People seemed more careful, more aware of how they carried themselves. Even Tracy, who once ruled the space with her voice and confidence, had become quieter. She still smiled and tried to lead conversations, but her charm didn't hold the same power anymore. Something in the air had shifted, and everyone could feel it. Daniel kept his usual rhythm. He arrived early, worked steadily, and rarely joined office gossip. He didn't gloat about the recent change, nor did he act as though anything special had happened. If anything, he was even more focused than before. Mr. Patel had started trusting him with more tasks, especially the kind that required accuracy and discretion. That trust meant a lot to Daniel, not because it made him powerful, but because it made his effort finally visible. One day, an email came through announcing a new company-wide project. It was the biggest one the department had handled in years, a system upgrade that would affect all regional offices. The project was important enough that the regional manager himself would oversee it closely. Everyone wanted to be part of it because success could mean promotions, bonuses, and recognition. Tracy immediately volunteered to lead. "I've been here long enough to understand how our systems work," she said during the meeting. "I think I can coordinate this better than anyone." A few people nodded out of habit, but Mr. Patel looked thoughtful. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he turned to Daniel and said, "I'd like you to assist with the technical and financial parts, Daniel. You've shown you understand both the numbers and the system." Daniel agreed quietly, though inside he knew what that meant. He would be doing most of the real work again. Still, he accepted without hesitation. "Of course," he said simply. Tracy smiled, pretending to be pleased. "Perfect," she said. "We'll make a great team." Over the next few weeks, the project began, and the pattern quickly became clear. Tracy handled the meetings and presentations, while Daniel handled the data, reports, and problem-solving. She was good at talking, but when it came to the details, she often relied on him to fix mistakes or explain concepts she didn't fully understand. Daniel didn't mind helping, but this time, he made sure everything was documented carefully. Every change, every file, every email. One afternoon, as they were reviewing numbers, Tracy looked frustrated. "Why are these figures off again?" she asked. Daniel replied calmly, "Because the last inputs were incorrect." "I already fixed them." She frowned but didn't argue. She knew he was right. Still, she made a note to herself to rephrase the explanation before sending the report upward, just enough to make it sound like she had found the issue. As the project progressed, deadlines got tighter. Daniel worked long hours, often staying late after everyone had gone home. The cleaning crew would pass by and he'd still be there, his eyes focused on spreadsheets and system logs. He didn't complain. For him, there was something satisfying about solving problems others couldn't. The work itself gave him peace. Tracy, on the other hand, seemed more nervous as the final presentation approached. She spent more time decorating slides and less time understanding the actual data. She wanted everything to look perfect, even if the foundation was weak. Daniel offered to review the final numbers before submission, but she waved him off. "Don't worry, I've got it," she said confidently. 2 days later, she sent the completed report to Mr. Patel. Not long after, an email came back requesting clarification on several Numbers. There were discrepancies between the budget report and the system data. Tracy panicked. She called Daniel into her office immediately.
You have to help me fix this, she said, her voice sharp but shaky.
I don't know what happened. Daniel looked over the report and noticed that some figures had been changed. These weren't the final numbers I submitted, he said quietly. Someone adjusted them before sending. She looked away, avoiding his eyes. I only changed a few things to make it cleaner, she said defensively. I didn't think it would cause a problem. He sighed softly but didn't scold her. Let's just fix it, he said. He stayed late that evening correcting every mistake. By the time he finished, it was almost midnight. The next morning, the corrected report was submitted, and Mr. Patel thanked them both for the quick turnaround. Tracy smiled in relief, acting as though everything had gone according to plan. Daniel didn't say a word, but what neither of them realized was that Mr. Patel had been paying close attention. He had seen the timestamps, the file versions, and the messages exchanged. He could tell who had done the real work and who had made careless changes. He didn't say anything immediately, but he made notes of everything. The day of the big presentation finally arrived. The entire department gathered in the conference room, along with executives from other branches. Tracy stood at the front with her confident smile, dressed perfectly, ready to impress. She began her speech, showing graphs and charts that Daniel had created. Her voice was smooth, her gestures practiced. For a while it seemed like things were going well. Then one of the executives asked a technical question about the budget variance shown in one of the slides. Tracy froze for a split second, then tried to explain it with vague words. It's related to system realignment, she said quickly. But when the follow-up question came, she couldn't answer. Her explanation didn't make sense. The room grew silent. Mr. Patel looked at Daniel. Would you like to clarify? He asked. Daniel stood slowly and walked to the front. In a calm tone, he explained the issue clearly, what caused it, how it was fixed, and how the final numbers were verified. His words were simple but confident. The executives nodded, impressed by his clarity. Tracy stood beside him, her forced smile fading with every word he spoke. When the meeting ended, everyone congratulated Daniel for his clear presentation. Mr. Patel shook his hand and said, "Excellent work. That was the kind of insight we need." Tracy tried to join the conversation, but the attention had already shifted away from her. For the first time, her charm didn't work. Her performance had been exposed by her own lack of understanding. Later that day, she avoided looking at Daniel. She spent most of her time in her office with the door closed. Some of the team whispered about what had happened, but no one was cruel. Most people just seemed relieved. Justice had happened naturally without anyone needing to push for it. Daniel didn't brag or make jokes. He acted as though it was just another day. Mr. Patel, however, didn't forget what he saw. A few days later, he called Daniel into his office. "I wanted to thank you again for your effort," he said. "You've been handling much of the department's technical work without much recognition. That's going to change." Daniel nodded humbly. "I appreciate that, sir. I just try to do my job well." Mr. Patel smiled. "And that's exactly why you stand out." That evening, as Daniel packed up his things, he noticed Tracy leaving early. She didn't say goodbye like she usually did. For the first time, she looked unsure of herself. Daniel watched her walk out, feeling no anger, no pride, just quiet acceptance. Life had taken its first step toward balancing itself. He didn't need to interfere. It was all unfolding naturally. When he stepped outside, the air was cool, and the city lights shimmered faintly in the distance. He felt lighter than he had in months. Maybe it wasn't about being loud or demanding attention. Maybe it was about staying true long enough for the truth to reveal itself. As he walked home that night, Daniel smiled to himself. Karma, he thought, wasn't something you chased. It was something you waited for. The week after the presentation felt like a quiet storm in the office. People talked in low voices, careful not to be overheard. Tracy's mistake during the big meeting had spread faster than anyone expected. No one said anything to her directly, but everyone knew what had happened. She had been caught pretending to understand something she didn't. The moment had stripped away the image she had built for years. And now she was no longer the center of attention. Daniel, on the other hand, found himself in a position he wasn't used to. People who rarely spoke to him before were now coming to his desk with questions. "Hey, can you take a quick look at this?" They'd ask. "You always get these things right." He helped them without hesitation, keeping his same calm tone. He didn't want fame or gossip. He just wanted to keep doing his job the right way. But deep down, he could feel that things were changing. His silence had turned into quiet respect. Mr. Patel noticed it too. He began calling Daniel into more meetings, asking for his opinions on important projects. He even asked Daniel to train a few newer employees who were struggling with data work. For the first time, Daniel's effort wasn't invisible anymore. People began to see him as someone who knew his work better than anyone, someone reliable and genuine. He didn't have to raise his voice or take credit. His actions had done that for him. Tracy, meanwhile, tried to recover. She dressed even more sharply, spoke more confidently in meetings, and laughed a little louder than before, but her energy felt forced. The same managers who once praised her now seemed cautious around her. When she made a suggestion, they listened politely but always double-checked the details with Daniel afterward. It was subtle, but she could feel it. Her influence was slipping away. One day she approached Daniel's desk. "Hey," she said softly, "can we talk for a minute?" Daniel looked up and nodded. They stepped into an empty meeting room. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, she said, "I know things have been weird lately. I just wanted to say, I appreciate the work you did on the project. You really saved us." Daniel studied her face. She looked nervous, not her usual confident self. "It's fine," he said. "We all make mistakes. What matters is that it got fixed." She nodded quickly. "Right," she said. "Still, thank you." He gave her a small smile and walked out. He didn't hold grudges. There was no need. What had happened had already balanced things in its own quiet way. But while Tracy tried to repair her reputation, the company had other plans. Mr. Patel began reorganizing the department. He wanted to separate leadership roles from technical responsibilities to make things run more smoothly. A few positions were being adjusted, and one of them was Tracy's. Her title was changed, giving her less control over projects. She still had a good role, but it was clear that she was no longer the decision-maker she once was. When the announcement came, the office went silent for a few seconds. Tracy smiled and congratulated the team, pretending she wasn't bothered. But her face tightened when she saw Daniel's name listed as Senior Project Coordinator. It wasn't a loud promotion, no big ceremony or speech, but everyone knew what it meant. Daniel was now the one who would lead the next major project. That evening, Daniel stayed back after everyone had left. He sat at his desk, looking at the updated organizational chart on his screen. His name was there, right under Mr. Patel's. He leaned back in his chair, quietly absorbing it all. He hadn't fought for it, hadn't tried to outshine anyone. It had just happened naturally, as if the universe had been keeping score all along. In the weeks that followed, Daniel's leadership style became something people admired. He didn't bark orders or demand recognition. He asked for input, listened carefully, and always made sure credit was shared fairly. The team began working better together. There was less competition, less pretending. For the first time, the office felt calm, productive, even happy. People no longer felt like they had to act like someone else to be noticed. Tracy still worked there, but she kept mostly to herself now. She showed up on time, did her tasks, and avoided trying to take the spotlight. Sometimes she glanced across the room at Daniel, who was now the one others turned to. It wasn't envy in her eyes anymore. It was something closer to realization. Maybe she finally understood what he had known all along. You don't win by being loud. You win by being true. One afternoon, Mr. Patel called both of them into his office. The company was preparing to present another major project to the corporate board, and he wanted the best people to represent the team. "Daniel," he said, "you'll lead the presentation this time. Tracy, you'll support with documentation and visuals." Tracy nodded, though her eyes flickered with disappointment. She had always been the one in front of the room before. Now she was sitting on the sidelines. Daniel didn't say much. He just agreed politely and got to work. But before leaving the office that night, he stopped by Tracy's desk. "If you need help with the visuals, let me know," he said kindly. She looked up, surprised. "Thanks," she said quietly. It wasn't just politeness, it was a small moment of understanding between two people who had seen both sides of ambition. The day of the presentation arrived, and the room was filled with executives again. But this time Daniel stood at the front. His voice was steady, his explanations clear. He didn't rush or try to impress. He just told the truth about the team's work. The executives listened carefully, nodding as he spoke. Tracy sat beside him, clicking through slides, realizing how naturally he commanded the room without trying to control it. When the meeting ended, applause broke out. Mr. Patel smiled proudly. "Excellent work," he said. "This is exactly the kind of leadership we need." Daniel thanked him modestly and looked at his team. "It wasn't just me," he said. "Everyone here played a part." The words were simple, but they carried weight. People could tell he meant them. After the meeting, as the team celebrated quietly in the break room, Tracy approached Daniel again. "You did great," she said sincerely. "Really?" He smiled. "Thanks. So did you." She laughed softly. "Not really, but thanks for saying it." Then, after a pause, she added, "I think I used to believe being loud made people respect you. Turns out it just makes them tolerate you." Daniel chuckled gently. "People remember how you make them feel," he said. "Not how loud you were." She nodded, her expression thoughtful. For the first time, there was no tension between them. No hidden rivalry, no silent resentment. Just two people who had learned their lessons differently. As the office slowly emptied, Daniel looked around the room where so much had changed. The same desks, the same walls, but a completely different atmosphere. He thought about how patience had carried him through everything. There were moments when it felt like no one noticed. Moments when he wanted to give up and speak out. But now he knew. Silence wasn't weakness. It was quiet strength waiting for the right moment. That night, when he stepped outside, the air felt cool again, just like the night after his first small victory. He looked up at the building lights and smiled faintly. He didn't need revenge or apologies. He didn't need to prove anything anymore. The truth had done the work for him. All he had to do was stay steady long enough to let it happen. Inside the office, the cleaners moved between desks, wiping away the day's clutter. Tracy's computer screen still glowed faintly, her new report half finished. She sat there alone thinking, maybe for the first time in a long while, about the difference between attention and respect. And somewhere in that quiet reflection, even she had to admit that karma, in its own patient way, had done exactly what it was supposed to do. The following weeks brought a quiet shift in the air at the office. People began treating Daniel differently, not with pity or forced kindness, but with genuine respect. For the first time, he felt seen. His calm nature hadn't changed, but now his silence carried weight. Whenever he spoke, even softly, people listened. The same colleagues who once ignored his ideas now asked for his input. It wasn't about fame or glory. It was about finally being recognized for who he truly was. Tracy, on the other hand, was a shadow of her former self. After the meeting that exposed her bluff, her confidence faded. She no longer strutted through the hallways with that air of superiority. Instead, she avoided eye contact and kept her desk unusually tidy, as if she could clean away the embarrassment. Rumors spread, but Daniel never joined the gossip. He knew it wasn't necessary. Karma had already done its work. A few days later, the regional manager, Mr. Patel, called Daniel into his office. The room was bright with morning light, and Daniel's hands felt slightly sweaty as he entered. He had no idea what to expect. Mr. Patel greeted him with a warm smile and gestured for him to sit. "Daniel," he began, "I've been reviewing the performance reports and observing how your department functions. I've noticed that much of the real progress stems from your contributions." Daniel shifted slightly, unsure what to say. He wasn't used to direct praise. "I just do my part," he replied humbly. Mr. Patel chuckled softly. "You do far more than that. You work hard, you stay calm under pressure, and you don't seek credit. That kind of character is rare in the workplace. We need people like you in leadership positions." Daniel's eyes widened slightly. "Leadership?" he repeated. "Yes," said Mr. Patel, leaning forward. "We're restructuring the department. I'd like you to take the role of senior project coordinator. You'll oversee new initiatives and guide upcoming teams." For a moment, Daniel was speechless. The same man who used to sit quietly at the back of the room was now being asked to lead. He took a slow breath, feeling a mix of gratitude and disbelief. "Thank you," he said finally, his voice steady. "I'll do my best," Mr. Patel nodded. "I believe you will." Word of Daniel's promotion spread through the office quickly. Some people were surprised, others quietly celebrated. Even those who had once underestimated him couldn't deny that he earned it. He hadn't climbed by stepping on others or pretending to be someone he wasn't. He simply let his work and time speak for him. As for Tracy, she was transferred to another branch not long after. It wasn't an official punishment, but everyone knew it was a soft exit. She'd lost the trust of management, and once that's gone, it's hard to rebuild. On her last day, she passed Daniel's desk, carrying a box of her things. She paused for a moment and gave him a faint nod. There was no arrogance left in her expression, only humility and quiet regret. Daniel returned the nod with a polite smile. "Take care," he said softly. She nodded again and walked away without a word. That simple exchange said everything. No revenge, no anger, just closure. Daniel didn't need her downfall to feel vindicated. Watching karma unfold had been enough. In the months that followed, Daniel's role grew busier but more fulfilling. He found himself guiding younger employees who reminded him of his younger self. Quiet, hardworking, and often overlooked. He made it a point to recognize their efforts, no matter how small. When someone stayed late to fix a mistake or handled a difficult client gracefully, Daniel made sure their names were mentioned in meetings. He knew how much it mattered to feel seen. One afternoon, he was helping a new intern prepare a report when she looked up and asked, "How did you stay so calm when people treated you unfairly?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Because I learned something important," he said. "You can't control how others behave, but you can control how you respond. If you stay patient and do what's right, things eventually balance themselves." The intern nodded thoughtfully, writing that down as if it were advice worth remembering. Sometimes, Daniel would stay late, sitting by the window that overlooked the city lights. He'd think about how far he'd come, not just in position but in peace of mind. He realized that true strength wasn't about fighting loudly or proving others wrong. It was about standing firm in silence and letting truth do its work. One evening, Mr. Patel stopped by his desk. "You've done well, Daniel," he said. "The new team respects you. You've built a culture of honesty here." Daniel smiled. "I just tried to do what I wished someone had done for me." "That's exactly what makes you a good leader," Mr. Patel replied before heading out. Daniel leaned back in his chair, feeling content. Life had come full circle in a quiet, satisfying way. The same office that once made him feel invisible had become a place where his presence mattered. Weeks later, at the company's annual recognition event, Daniel was called to the stage. The room filled with applause as his name was announced. Standing under the warm lights, he looked around at the familiar faces, some old, some new, and felt an unexpected wave of emotion. He thanked his team, his mentors, and even those who challenged him along the way. His words were simple but sincere. "Hard work and honesty may take time to be noticed," he said, "but they never go to waste." The audience clapped again, not just out of formality but with genuine admiration. After the event, a few colleagues approached him to share how his quiet strength had inspired them to handle things differently. One said, "You showed us that success doesn't have to be loud." Another added, "You proved that patience really does pay off." Daniel didn't know what to say except thank you. He wasn't trying to be a symbol of anything. He was just being himself. Later that night, as he walked to his car, the parking lot was quiet except for the soft hum of city sounds in the distance. He paused for a moment, looking up at the sky. The stars were faint but visible, and he couldn't help but smile. Life had its strange way of balancing things out. Some call it luck, some call it fate, but to him, it was simply karma doing its quiet work. He remembered the times he wanted to speak up but chose not to, the moments when he felt invisible, and the days when he questioned if being kind was worth it. Now he had his answer. It was worth it, all of it. Every late night, every silent sacrifice, every time he bit his tongue instead of retaliating. It had all led here. As he drove home, he felt a calm that no title or recognition could bring. It was the peace of knowing he had stayed true to himself. He didn't need to prove anything anymore. Life had done that for him. And in that stillness, Daniel realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's peace. It's watching karma unfold at its own pace, knowing that truth, when left alone, always finds its way home.